much of the work with Agenda 2063 is working. It's done, among the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which has the integration, responsibility. The NDPC, which participated in the Tunisia, Tanzania, forum, recently, and the Ministry of Trade. As you are aware, the Minister for Trade is here, chairing, a session which is going to launch, a major report. Ghanaians may not know, but the ECA, which is organizing these events, was once headed by, Ghanaian, and so we have been deeply, involved in the work that is ongoing. I think that the focus, of Agenda 2063 is not, in as much as it is continental and linked to the work of, say, NEPAD and other continent-wide bodies that were established. The focus now, the change, or what is different, is that there is a regional connection which I mentioned. In other words, working with SADC, working with ECOWAS on their regional programs to be part of Agenda 2063. That the country has outlined for itself. So in our context, and that explains the participation of the NDPC, is GSGDA 1 and 2. At the time the deliberations were ongoing, it was GSGDA 1, and then now GSGDA 2. So you can see that in terms of our national agenda, the transformation agenda, whatever we do in the country by way of, for example, to use one example, infrastructure development, our highways, for example, or the power, projects that we are doing, they fall one into the Power Africa agenda, which has the Compact 2 and the US connection. The highways also fall into the West African highway projects. There is a continent-wide, effort to connect power grids across the continent, and there's a continent-wide, effort to also connect the various countries that link from north to east, west, South Africa, central. So you can see a bottom-up approach, whereby first the policy comes, at a continental level, as mandated by the heads of state, and fora like these, the finance ministers. But then subsequently, it's make sure that it's integrated into the work, of the individual countries. There are other very interesting innovations that are going on. For example, one of the major sessions of the finance ministers is how will Africa mobilize the resources for this infrastructure development. So it is no longer a question of big, infrastructure plans that remain on the books, but then how do you finance it? And in as much as there is an emphasis on domestic revenue mobilization, and here revenue has been expanded to not just include taxes, but to include pension funds, insurance funds, and others, which the continents and countries can harness for this sort of development through their stock exchanges, through, say, infrastructure funds, through sovereign wealth funds, which you can see have a national dimension, or through Africa 50, which has a continental dimension. That's the new investment room for the African Development Bank. It is also accepted that Africa needs to integrate into the global financial market. And so you can see the nexus, between environment, sustainable development, between MDG goals. So there's a discussion of post 2015, under the MDG, which progress has been through development and then through financing. So this is a more integrated approach. That Ghana has programs that fit into this agenda. First of all, Ghana has been key with revenue mobilization, including the establishment of the Revenue Authority, which is a phenomenon in Africa. So in terms of tax mobilization, our efforts is in sync with what is going on. Ghana is also, as you know, through the infrastructure fund that Parliament passed, is aiming to use the oil revenues, pension funds, and others, as a lever, for the capital markets and to develop our infrastructure, and to use these funds to leverage the African Development Bank Africa 50 Fund. Ghana is also establishing, say, the Exim Bank to link with Afri-Exim, which is a continental, body. So, in whatever perspective you see it, or in terms of the developmental agenda, as I mentioned, GSGDA is part of, the continental, wide. In some cases, we are advanced. The GSGDA, for example, as a development platform, is in Parliament, having been debated. In terms of establishing institutions like the Infra Fund, we are already making progress. Infrastructure development as part of the integrated West African power, and other. Ghana is already. But there are other areas also where we are just beginning, such as the Exim Bank, and the rest. And, the agenda is for 2063, but also it is being broken for purposes of effective monitoring into 10-year, blocks. So what you have now to be approved is the first 10-year, agenda. Of course, our GSGDA has a 4-year, maximum, but there's talk in Ghana about a longer, medium-term planning. So probably, given the 10-year context of Agenda 2063, we could address ourselves to longer, term planning, which is consistent, with, say, borrowing long-term in order that, as we are experimenting now, projects can pay for themselves within that time period. So I would say Ghana is in various stages, but Ghana is well positioned, in this, program or agenda. Well, you can see from the discussions here the goodwill, that there's an understanding of Ghana's, situation.
And what is the situation?
Well, the situation is as we have been describing it.
How have we been describing it?
No, this was a country that experienced growth. It's been in our budgets, even this year's budget. We said that we experienced growth, but as a country that faces volatilities also, the gas supply disruption for the West Africa gas pipeline, the shortfall in gold, cocoa, price, and now crude oil, brought some setback, including some policy areas such as, policy areas such as the single spine, subsidy, and the rest. You know that we launched a homegrown policy, and we are going into an IMF program specifically to correct this. So we'll be correcting this. And we have also said that if you take the economy, the medium-term prospects are good, because apart from the consolidation, the service sector is strong, agric is rebounding, and we are going to go into we have actually entered the gas era. Our own gas is now coming on stream. The 10th, our own gas is actually flowing into the gas processing plant. What you are talking about, June, is the concerted effort, through the power budgets to address the power shortages or the doom solve, if you like. But beyond that, there is a medium term, where the Sankofa field in particular, will be bringing sufficient gas and IPPs. So there is effective planning.
But the IMF board hasn't approved the Ghana deal yet.
The IMF board has set a date, April 3rd. In the IMF, we're not serious in approving to take a decision. And so we are so I think that the skepticism that is being expressed, as though we are not making any progress, is actually not based on anything.
In practical terms, how is the IMF deal going to change anything?
I think we've gone over this several times. We have said that, the IMF comes in when you have been buffeted by commodity prices, which is what happened. The cedi was depreciating. And the IMF is the foremost institution that provides balance of payment support, You know, so we, as a member of the fund, we are going there. As you know, the figure has been publicized, over $900 million, dollars, we made available to the central bank to stabilize, the balance of payment situation. Even as we consolidate, it will come along, with some resources, both our own resources and DP's resources, leveraging, the sovereign bond issues, so it's not just the IMF in isolation. We have had many programs. We went back to Parliament. I think this is another thing, which we need to be particular. Okay. We went back to Parliament in the interim to take away the bridge element of the proposal that was. So what we are doing is just going for a bond.
So you're not going for the bridge fund anymore?
I'm saying that as at now we have suspended that. Okay. And I was saying that if you follow the trend, in Parliament before the rules, what Parliament approved is just for the bond.